So hello everybody and welcome. This is Lizzie and Justin from Thirdspace, and we are here for another week of our Turning Towards Life conversation. And Lizzie, I'm so happy to be here with you and everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this unfolding conversation. Maybe you're brand new to this, in which case, come along with us. We're going to read a beautiful source poem that Lizzie's brought, and then we're going to talk about it for half an hour. And we're glad that you're with us and in the conversation. You can find the sources on the notes for our podcast. You can come and join our Facebook group. Just search for Turning Towards Life. We also have a lovely website, turningtowards.life, where all the sources and all the conversations are. And all of that is important, Lizzie. But right now, today, I just want to say you and I are coming into this at a slightly different time in the day than usual, because we're both deeply, deeply in the second session of 4 of the year-long coaching program that we do at Thirdspace together. And I notice that I'm carrying all of those people with us here into this conversation too. So I feel like my joyfulness that's come from doing that work is flowing through into this, and I'm grateful to all of them and for the kind of space we can create that I think will shape this conversation together too.
Yeah. Well, already, Justin, this poem came into my orbit during the time that we've been together doing this session. And one reason that I felt like I wanted to bring it, because it's an acknowledgement of actually what our whole program is about. You know, right now I feel like if there was a poem needed to express the deep intention and possibility and what we're up to in the year-long program, maybe this is one way that we could say it. And so I want to also acknowledge Rosemary, because Rosemary, if you're listening, I was just saying to Justin before we came that I feel so drawn to all of the things that you're writing. And I know we only had one of your poems 2 weeks ago, and part of me feels like, oh, I could just do a Rosemary poem every single week, because of the alignment that I experience through the way that Rosemary writes and expresses and tells the story of being human. Feels so not far away from what we're doing and who we are and what we're standing for in the world and what we're teaching and all that stuff. So I want to appreciate that, Rosemary. I've never met you in body, and yet I feel like we're connected on a very familiar level, and I'm really grateful for that. So Rosemary, thank you for writing our hearts and letting us also speak it here, and for us to get deeper into what it is that we're all pointing to with these words that we use. So I'm going to begin and dedicate this, as you said, Justin, to those of us who are on this session too, in London, but all over the world. Everybody's on Zoom at the moment. So it's for everybody all around the world who's participating in this extraordinary integral development coaching program with us. So here we go. This is called As You Have Done For Me by Rosemary Watola Trummer. If you were here, I would put my hand on your heart and hold it there until our breaths became a single tide. Hold it there until I could feel the moment when you remember your infinite value. It's so easy to forget we are treasure, so easy to lose track of our own immeasurable worth. The chest rusts shut. We think we're empty. Amazing how easily we are fooled into believing we are paupers. Sometimes it takes another to remind us we have always been not only the treasure, but also the key. Though the hinges are a metaphor, the treasure is not. We were made to open, to share our priceless gift, to press our hands to each other's hearts until we all remember.
As You Have Done For Me by Rosemary Watola Trummer. If you were here, I would put my hand on your heart and hold it there until our breaths became a single tide. Hold it there until I could feel the moment when you remember your infinite value. It's so easy to forget. We are treasure. So easy to lose track of our own immeasurable worth. The chest rusts shut. We think we are empty. Amazing how easily we are fooled into believing we're paupers. Sometimes it takes another to remind us we have always been not only the treasure, but also the key. Though the hinges are a metaphor, the treasure is not. We were made to open, to share our priceless gift, to press our hands to each other's hearts until we all remember.
Thank you, Justin. My gosh, just being in receipt of you saying that right here, it's like you're telling me the truth. I can feel this deep affirmation of what it means to be human, that this is what we're here for. That in one sense, we're simply here for each other, to remind each other of our immeasurable worth. And that we can do that by putting each other's hands on each other's chests and being together. Our being together reconnects us to our own selves. So somehow the gift of you is that I get to know who I am because you're here with me, or I get to feel my worth because of the way that you are with me. What a gift that we can be this as humans for each other. And this whole thing about breath as well, it's just a reminder of our bodies, of the extraordinariness of these bodies, that we could breathe together, that we have this sameness that connects us already. It's so beautiful to read this and to feel it read to me as well. So thank you.
I was thinking, Lizzie, what you said has really helped me deepen this. I was feeling as you were reading, and then as I was reading, this part where Rosemary says it's so easy to forget that we're treasure. And the part that I can immediately feel into was, for many of us, the cultures in which we live and in which we've grown up tell us anything but this. Again and again and again, they tell us that we're not good enough, that we're worthless, that we would be worth something if, and there's always a condition to it. If I get my grades, if I get that job, if I wasn't unemployed, if my body was different to how it is, if I had this amount in my bank account, if I wasn't in debt, if I wasn't sick, if my hair weren't grey, if, then I would be a value. And it seems to me that there's a whole wider culture that many of us are thrown into that feeds on and then feeds our feeling of our own immeasurable unworth. And as long as we feel that, it keeps something keeps something going in the culture, that we'll keep on buying certain things or we'll keep on acting in particular ways. So I was feeling that, but the thing I realized, if really in a new way, when you were talking about needing one another, was that it's probably something of, there are all the sort of commercial interests in keeping that thing going and political interests in keeping that feeling of unworth going, because it keeps certain cycles in our economies going and all of that. But there's also the way in which what's going on, I think, might be a sort of collective projection onto one another of the emptiness we feel in ourselves. So it might begin in the culture rather than in us. But once this feeling of there's something missing has taken root, because it's so painful to feel that way, what many of us do unwittingly is we project our own feeling of emptiness onto one another. And so I do, without even realizing it, things to make you feel your own lack. And we all participate in keeping it going. And then the really painful thing is, we promise that if you want a way out of that, you have to do it on your own. So then you find a book that says, you can be the whatever, like, oh, so now in the midst of all of the weight of this something happening that's inside me and coming at me from all over, now I have to haul myself up if I'm going to. And the antidote to it is actually really simple in a way. It's not simple in the sense of how much attention it takes and how much care it takes and everything, but the antidote to it is really simple, which is that we can be ones. We could dedicate ourselves to being ones who recognize treasure when we see it. And we can start as much as we can by recognizing it in ourselves, and we can start as much as we can in recognizing it in one another. And then the thing to realize is that every time we do this twin act of recognizing it in ourselves and recognizing it in another, which is where relationship comes in, we're together undoing the pull of the culture that has us think that we're empty and that fools us into believing we're paupers. And it really helps to do it together, because the other thing we're actually doing together, the cultural thing we're doing together. So let's not do it on our own.
Yeah. My goodness, it feels so important to be undermining what's gone before in this way. Like as you're speaking, Justin, it feels like what we're doing here is an act of some kind of rebellion. And obviously rebellion is always relative to something. And what a thing to be relative to, and to be cultivating relationship like this, like even just between you and me now in this conversation. This is some act of rebellion, like cultural rebellion or something. Because as you said, this soup that we're all swimming in, all the messages we receive about independence and having our own lives together, and then being our lives, and what are you going to do with your life, and all of that stuff, and all the expectations that are there, so woven in. And then for me, the freeing feeling of, oh, I just need to be in relationship with people for that not to feel like this horrible underlying drag on my life. It's like an antidote to something but the antidote is really doable. It's really natural. It's not some kind of wrenching or something difficult, or just to be in conversation and to find our depth together and be alongside each other, looking at our lives and wandering into conversation with one another, really listening. It's so human. It feels so human, so ordinary. And that you might be like, if I could enter into this with this story about what we're doing, that you might be the treasure and I might be the treasure. And the thing about treasure is it's interesting, isn't it? It's like you see treasure and it beams and you wonder what it is, because it's apparently of great value, but we don't really know that. We just, you stumble across something that looks like treasure and you wonder and go, oh, it's like we are that for each other as human beings, or at least we can be. And this is maybe another story that we can bring more widely into our culture by being this way and telling this story, that we are treasure and that there are beauties and value to be found in one another. That is what we're seeking in all the other stuff that we're told that it belongs in, like you said, like the successes or the money or a car or I don't know what else. I'm finding it really difficult to contact that world right now and contact with you because you're feeling so valuable to me right now. And I'm feeling so valuable to me. And this conversation's feeling so valuable to me. So I can tell it's the antidote right now in my body. Because in this moment, I feel infinitely interested in right here. I don't feel interested in those things that I can often be interested in, which are the products of that world you're speaking about, the illusory stuff of you'll be worth it if you're like this, you'll feel your worth if you do this. And actually, inside of this conversation and this relationship and this community as well that we're in, Justin, it feels like worthiness is the soup we swim in. I can feel value inside of it, erupting from it. So then I don't have to turn around and find it somewhere else. That's it was never there in the first place anyway. And I've kind of proved that to myself over many years. And still I turn. And then this happens and our community happens. And I think, oh, the value's just been placed here rather than somewhere else that I have to seek.
Mm. I was just feeling whilst you were talking the tragedy of the other way.
Mm.
And there's this, my eyes, I've got Rosemary's poem in front of me, and my eyes keep on getting drawn to we're made to open and to share our
Yeah.
priceless gift and to press our hands to each other's hearts until we all remember. And that felt so true for me whilst you were speaking, and Lizzie, that it is an act of remembering. It's not, it's anything but a superficial act to be dedicated to seeing the gift that we and other people are. It's not an act of positive thinking or a sort of affirmation or something. It's a way of looking and feeling and sensing into one another, where we
Mm.
become sensitive to the actual gifts, the particular gifts,
Mm.
the gifts of courage and the gifts of creativity and the gifts of love and the gifts of truthfulness and integrity and sincerity. And because there would be a shallow way to come at Rosemary's invitation, which is to say, you're great, Lizzie, which is
Mm.
true, but it's not particular enough. There are many things that are particularly true about you that are only true about you and will be gone when you are gone.
Mm.
And there are gifts that are true of me that will be gone when I'm gone. And that was the tragic part I was feeling into, was that the whole story of forgetting that we're treasured, where we defer it, where we go, oh, maybe one day I'll be of value. And we
Mm.
tell one another, you're not of value, you better fix yourself up.
Yeah.
You're not of value because you didn't get your grades. You're not.
Mm.
The as well as the suffering that is in that, the other part of it is if not now, when?
Mm.
Like, none of us know whether or not the whatever it is that we're doing or whoever it is that we're being with at any particular time, we don't know if it's the last time. One time it will be the last time.
Yeah.
And will we have waited until then, still in the story that what we have here isn't of value until later? And
Mm.
lots of us don't get a later, and yet right now the whole of existence and the whole of history has led to us right now. How could that not be filled with gifts that we could attend to here? And I'm sort of I'm taken by what you were saying about rebellion. There's something in me that's very fierce about this. That it's an act of care for one another and for this existence that we find ourselves in, to be the ones who remind ourselves and one another of the treasure who's here, and who don't, and who work against the we're empty,
Mm.
our forgetfulness, I don't think we have time to do that. More and more is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I'm noticing as well, Justin, as you're speaking, I find myself kind of tuning into what it's like to be in the world in this way, to be a person who encounters themselves as treasure and wonders about other people being treasure as well. And we've often talked about in these conversations like what it means to receive one's life. And I think that's just another way of saying maybe what you're talking about, which is to be here and to let life be lived. The part that you're talking about where it's like everything's delayed, everything's somewhere else, everything's in the future or in some other status or some other achievement of some kind. It feels, I don't know what the word is, anti-reverent. I don't know how to say it, but the opposite of reverence. And what arises in this conversation for me is a kind of reverence and an appreciation for having been given life. Like I can speak. I have breath flowing through my body. I can see you. My joints work, not wholly perfectly, but my fingers move. Like light is refracting. Somehow this treasureness seems to me to be a practice of contacting reverence, of being one who allows life to have an impact in this moment rather than me kind of carrying on as if it's not extraordinary. Like somehow the conversation about treasure brings me to the shock and awe and beauty and wonder that we're even here in the first place. So I'm making this connection afresh actually about the valuing of your inherent Justinness, the valuing of my inherent Lizziness without the worldly trappings of what all of that is. Just simply you have value because you're you and I have value because I'm me. Wandering into that and feeling that and living that way in this moment, it's like an intimacy arises with the giftedness that we are. We are gifted. We have been gifted. And how extraordinary to make the connection between connectedness of human beings and the way we can see one another and revere one another and respect each other's unique gifts, like you were saying, that brings about not just yours and my relationship, but something much, much bigger, which is an encounter with life itself as something to be revered. And that you can be my route into that, just as you, with your apparently embodied Justinness in conversation with me in a heartfelt, hand on each other's heart way, that somehow it's a route into something much, much bigger than what I'm ordinarily in contact with.
Yeah, I feel like you, Lizzie, and Rosemary together are teaching us that we are I'm going to quote Rosemary directly, that we're also the key, that we're the key to one another, recognizing the gift that we are and the gift that our life is, which has got nothing to do with our circumstances. That's the part that I keep on hearing. So it seems to me really important to say that right in the middle of my grief, I'm still treasure. It doesn't mean I'm not grieving. Right in the middle of my fear, I still have gifts that are right here, ready to bring. Right in the middle of the situation of not being able to find somewhere warm and dry to sleep at night, we confuse the circumstance with the person. we do it to ourselves, and we do it to other people.
Mm.
And the antidote to it isn't some kind of clearly isn't some kind of, well, you ought not to feel your grief, and you ought not to feel your fear, and you ought not to feel the injustice that you're subject to, and you ought not to feel um, the way in which you've been denied access to resources, and you ought not to feel what it feels like to lose someone you love, and you ought, it's none of those things. That would just be, in a way, that would be so disrespectful to the gift that we are, which is that we are the ones who are right here in the midst of all of this, in the actualness of our lives, and we are always not just our circumstances. We're being affected by our circumstances.
Mm.
I somehow think that this is part of this key, is for me to be able to say to you, Lizzie, I see you're in pain, and I also see your beauty. I see that that
Mm.
thing that you said to me hurt really bad,
Mm.
but I also see my own beauty and yours in this situation. Can we find that that's the something that might give us the chance to talk about our differences together, or the misunderstanding we're in, or
Mm.
might have me curious about your intentions when I've been absolutely certain you were out to get me, or something. So it's
Yeah.
anything but avoidant
Mm.
to feel our own, to be attuned to our own gifts. It's actually a way of looking more deeply into the
Yeah.
truthfulness of the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and
Yeah.
yet finding our capacity to bring ourselves in whatever way we can right in the middle of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What an amazing story to be telling, Justin, about being human. That right here, whatever you're in, whatever your reaction right now is, what if it was just true, like the truth that we know what it's like to stand on concrete with our bare feet, just a truth, simple truth like that, that there's something always else here other than my reactivity or my judgment. Like, what if that was true, that we all just knew that and felt that? And how far from that we've all come. So many times it feels like we are the reaction that we're in, and that we're right, and that is all of me. My hatred is all of me, or my anger is all of me, or my withdrawal is all of me, or the thing I think is all of me, and the thing you think is all of you. Like, we're so sucked into this teensy place so many times in life. And when you were just saying that right in the midst of the difficulty and right in the midst of the injustice is beauty as well, it's like we don't have to remove anything, we don't have to change anything. It's a big fat and maybe when we encounter and we're making contact with this, as Rosemary said, as we hold our hands on each other's hearts, we could be brave enough to do that. All of those things become different by virtue of us being treasure encounterers with one another. And we can hold so much more between us. We can fall out, and that's not such a big deal anymore. We can have a fight, and not everything is going to fall apart. We're never going to see each other again. There's so much more possibility available if this is what we're doing with one another. It's really beautiful to feel it and to soften into the reality of that here with you.
I love. I'm really I'm really feeling the impact on my own life right now, Lizzie, of difficulties I'm in, which we all are in, difficulties in our lives all the
Mm-hmm.
time in one way or another. Of feeling the we're in conflict with one another, and that's not all we are. We're in disagreement with one another, and that's not all we are. I'm hurting so badly, and that's not all I am. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel really redoubled in my fierce commitment to doing the work of right in the middle of that, of seeing, and of course Rosemary's words are so helpful with that, with this of keeping on remembering that we were made to open and to share our priceless gift. Right, that's right where it's called for. Right in those moments, rather than the contracting and going, because I'm in difficulty, I must be empty. Quite the opposite. But I'm also, the last thing that just is for me to say is I'm just sort of fantasizing about what would it be. Well, I know that this is a large part of our work and what we've just been in the middle of this weekend with the coaching program. What would it be to be someone who dedicated themselves to teaching ourselves and others about one another's beauty? What if we committed ourselves to this project of putting our hands on one another's hearts and holding it there until our breaths become a single tide, until we can feel the moment when we remember our infinite value? What if we did that with our children and with our friends and with the pupils in the school where we teach, and with the person who serves the coffee, and with the person who's digging in the road, and with the person who collects the taxes, and with, I could go on.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. This is so extraordinarily, what is it? It's like basking in some kind of deep warmth or something to be in this conversation like this. And I'm feeling a rush of gratitude for Rosemary and your writing, and the fact that there are people who are all up to this, seeing this kind of thing, makes me feel really, really hopeful. And thank you for these sources that bring these conversations forth. They call us forth, these sources, Justin, and we're the mere kind of participants in the powerful calling forthness of the sources. And it's really beautiful to be in that, to be dancing in that space. And we're probably at our time now, and we're going to be back next Sunday. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rosemary, again. Thank you for being in this conversation with us in whatever way you are. We're so grateful that you're here and that we keep turning up because you're here. And Justin, thank you always for being this openness and this trustful and wandering in with me. It's very precious.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.